Shock news. At the end of the first day of the second pre-season Formula 1 test at Barcelona, McLaren, of all teams, are fastest. Lando Norris with a late lap deposing Red Bull's Pierre Gasly from the top of the timesheet. So, McLaren, surely favourites for the World Championship now. I'm joined by Ed Straw, Jack Cousins, to talk about day one of Test 2 at Barcelona, and McLaren shockingly at the top of the times. How much can we read into that? How good was their day, really?
Well, they're not fastest, that's absolutely for sure. I think we saw pretty much what McLaren is capable of there. Lando Norris did a 1 minute 17.709. That was about 7 tenths faster than we saw from McLaren in the previous test, and I think 3 tenths off the fastest time we've seen of pre-season testing in its entirety, which was set by Nico Hülkenberg's Renault in the last test. I mean, we know it was on the C4 tyres, so that's the second softest, probably pretty low fuel. So, yeah, they wanted to get a feel for the car. They spent a lot of the day doing fairly heavy running, not particularly good lap times, so maybe they just wanted to get a feel for the car. It's not necessarily a glory run because there is benefit in something approaching qualifying trim, and it's good for Lando Norris, rookie driver, get a feel for some new tyres, do a few practice runs. So I think that's probably what it's all about. But yeah, McLaren is thoroughly in the midfield, and in fact looking like one of the less compelling ones of that midfield group so far.
Yeah, it's probably fair to say that it's not a representative picture of McLaren's performance. I mean, it was the fourth quickest time of pre-season testing so far this year, and the first time McLaren's been on top of the time since Fernando Alonso topped the snowed-out day of 2018 testing. I think it was the only guy to set a time, and previously it was 2014. Button and Magnussen in the first season of the hybrid engine. So unusual for McLaren to be at the top. Probably more representative is to look at Red Bull and Ferrari. They were trading times earlier on in the day, both using the sort of more representative C3 compound. Gasly obviously was in the car all day and he was very quick. Leclerc matching him mostly 10th for 10th, and then Vettel taking over. I think Gasly ended up a couple of tenths clear. Jack, you were following the test very closely in those runs. What did you make of those performances, and what does it say about the progress Red Bull are making as we start week 2?
Yeah, I think Red Bull hit the target that we were hoping to see from them today at the start of the second test. It was a sort of first look at a performance run from them. They obviously, the mileage they achieved with the Honda engine in the first week, I think, probably caught us all a little bit by surprise. No issues whatsoever. So first week done, no problems. Then they can start to focus on these performance runs. The fight, if you like, that we had between the two took a little while to get going. Leclerc had an issue in the morning, no, not an issue as such.
Cooling checks, I think the team said, wasn't it?
Is correct. Yeah, so that delayed his representative running a little bit. But once, as you say, once he got going, he was matching Gasly, who we've tried to go back through it, and we can't see the Red Bull having run on anything else other than the C3 compound today. So that's obviously one that they feel, is representative of what to expect when we come to Barcelona later in the year. Vettel, again, when he took over from Leclerc in the afternoon, straight back on the pace that the Red Bull was showing. In the sort of later stages of the day, they were focusing more on long runs, and they were particularly long runs.
Yeah.
Coming into the pits, changing tyres and going straight back out again. So a lot of mileage from Ferrari in the afternoon, perhaps to make up for the fact that they didn't get as much in the morning. But yeah, really interesting to see those two up there and one team that you might expect from that lead fight missing.
Yeah, absolutely. That brings us neatly to Mercedes. They're the big team missing from that picture. Obviously, they had a difficult time in week 1 and questions over the handling of the car and the general aero concept. Obviously, they brought a big raft of updates to the car for this week's test, which they stressed was in the plan all along and signed off in January, so not a direct reaction to what happened in week 1, although obviously there's a learning there. So what do we make of Mercedes' performance? We haven't really seen much from them. How far behind are they? Is there a crisis there, or is everything on plan for Mercedes?
Certainly not a crisis. I think we can't really say how far behind they are now. It's quite encouraging that there was such major changes to the car. A lot of aerodynamic revisions. Giorgio Piola, the technical expert, he spotted 12 obvious visual differences in the car, which means a lot of new parts. This is a pretty significant package and a big change. Ferrari, by contrast, didn't have much in the way of aero parts. So if you look at it as a kind of earlier version of the Mercedes that was used for launch, shakedown and test won, and then the upgraded version here, they've taken a big step forward. We don't really know what the pace is. They were focusing on the normal program, a lot of running on the C2 compound, the second hardest.
And they had a problem too, didn't they? Bottas required an engine change, I think, for an oil pressure problem. So it seems that they're behind in terms of understanding that package.
Yeah, certainly. They would have lost most of the afternoon's running. I think Bottas only managed 7 laps or so that would have hit the program. But it is a very substantial change, and they were clearly struggling a little bit with a few things in the first test. But the fact this is such a big change, I think, is, I don't know whether you call it encouraging, but it shows that, yeah, there is a lot more to come. There was a lot more to come. We've seen it. So why exactly they ended up with a relatively basic package? It's a much earlier iteration. It's not like that was cast 1 week before what we've seen here today. This is quite a bit of work that's gone into it over time. So I think we've seen something that's much closer to the real Mercedes. I mean, you'd still say Ferrari so far all's going well, but if Mercedes was, estimates vary in the first test. Some people put them within a tenth of Ferrari, some people are putting it more towards half a second, but there's enough change in that car once we see the pace, provided everything works as they hope and they understand, and that's a big question which we can't answer with certainty yet. They should be in good shape. And this is, after all, Mercedes, who are 5 consecutive double world championships for a very, very good reason. So let's see over the next few days when they start doing proper representative long runs and maybe a few performance runs, even though carrying a bit of fuel, and we'll start to get a bit of a feel. But it's not a massive crisis for them, but it's not quite what we've normally seen from Mercedes in previous years in pre-season testing, where they've normally hit the ground running with a car that's pretty well developed and well evolved. So fractionally behind that, nothing too much to worry about, but it's a question of, are they a few tenths off Ferrari? We don't really know at the moment, so we'll find out in the coming days.